On the distant planet of cities floated high above the clouds, connected by delicate bridges of light and crystal. The inhabitants were unlike anything humans had ever seen, aliens with shimmering skin that changed color with their emotions, wings that sparkled in the sun, and eyes that reflected the stars themselves. Despite their strange beauty, life here was not always easy. Among the floating city of a widow named moved silently through her home. Her mate had been taken suddenly by a storm that had torn through the skies months ago. She still remembered the sound of his laughter echoing across the platforms, the gentle warmth of his hand in hers, and the way he had always found joy in the simplest things. Now her home felt empty, her heart weighed down with a grief she could not escape. Every corner reminded her of him. Every shadow whispered his absence. Rarely left her home, for the villagers' eyes, though kind, reminded her constantly of what she had lost. She wandered only at dawn, when the sky was calm and the wind gentle, walking along the edge of her platform, staring at the glowing clouds below. Sometimes she imagined she could see in the distance, smiling at her, telling her everything would be all right. One morning, as the pale light of twin suns spilled across the city, a small figure appeared on the platform. It was a human child, no taller than Snee, with wide, curious eyes and a tangle of brown hair that caught the sunlight. His small body seemed fragile in the vast alien world, yet there was a confidence in the way he moved, a determination that made him impossible to ignore. The child's name was Sam. He was visiting with his parents on an interstellar research mission. He had been fascinated by the floating cities, the alien beings, and the strange technology that made everything shimmer and hover. But when he spotted sitting alone near the edge of her home, something tugged at his heart in a way he couldn't explain. Slowly he approached her, careful not to startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked in the soft, human voice he had practiced with his parents. Froze. She was not used to anyone speaking to her, not in months. Her gaze fell on the small human, and she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time, genuine concern. I am fine," she said softly, her voice trembling despite her attempt to hide it. She expected him to leave, to vanish like a dream, and yet he remained, his eyes filled with curiosity and kindness. The child sat down beside her without being invited, his legs dangling over the edge of the platform. "You look sad," he said simply. "Is it because you lost someone?" His wings twitched in surprise. How could such a tiny creature understand? She had tried to hide her grief from everyone, yet this human child had noticed. For the first time in months, felt a small spark of something she had thought she had lost forever: hope. She looked at Sam, his innocent face serious beyond his years, and something inside her shifted. Perhaps, she thought, grief could be shared. Perhaps she could speak to someone, even someone so small, and feel a little lighter. I lost someone very important," she admitted, her voice breaking. "My mate, he's gone. I don't know how to live without him." Sam nodded solemnly, his small hand reaching out to touch hers. The gesture was so simple, yet it carried a warmth that made her chest ache. "I think everyone has someone they care about," he said quietly. "And when they are gone, it's really hard, but maybe talking about them helps. I can listen." Stared at him, feeling the strange mixture of shock and relief. A human child listening, understanding, comforting. It was impossible, yet here it was. The sun climbed higher, and the wind carried soft whispers across the city. And Sam sat in silence for a while, two unlikely companions sharing the quiet. The loneliness that had pressed down on her heart for so long seemed a little lighter. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine that life could go on, that perhaps she could smile again, that perhaps she could trust in someone new, even if it was just a small human child. In that moment, a bond was formed, not through words alone, but through presence, through understanding, and through a tiny spark of hope. The floating city of continued its serene dance above the clouds, oblivious to the grief and the healing that took place on one small platform. And the widow felt a faint, almost forgotten warmth in her heart. a warmth that whispered that maybe, just maybe, help could come from the most unexpected places. The next morning, the sun rose again over the floating city of spilling golden light across the crystal platforms. Found herself waiting near the edge of her home, though she didn't quite understand why. Perhaps it was the hope she felt yesterday, or the tiny spark in her heart that Sam had ignited. Either way, she was not alone this time. Sam appeared almost as if he had sensed her waiting. He carried a small bundle in his arms, carefully wrapped in soft cloth. "Good morning," he called, his voice cheerful despite the faint winds that swept through the platforms. Merely nodded, unsure of what to say. She felt both wary and curious. Humans were fragile, unpredictable, and yet there was something about this child she could trust. "I brought you something," Sam said, holding out the bundle. Hesitated, then gently untied the cloth. Inside were glowing crystals, tiny shards of rare energy stones that he had found on one of the lower platforms. Their soft light reflected in her eyes, painting her wings in a cascade of colors. For a moment, she felt a flicker of joy she hadn't known in months. You remembered," she whispered, almost afraid to break the fragile moment. Sam smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "I remembered you looked sad yesterday. I thought these might help." Felt warmth rise in her chest. No one had thought to care for her like this in so long. Days passed, and Sam returned every morning without fail. He brought little gifts, fruits with unusual flavors, trinkets that glimmered in the sun, and small sketches of the city from his human perspective. Began to open up, sharing fragments of her life and memories of her lost mate. She spoke of laughter, the gentle way he had guided her wings, and the adventures they had taken together. Sam listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. "I think he would like you," said one day, staring at the human child as he carefully arranged her crystals. "He would be glad you are here." Sam's eyes widened slightly. "Really? You think so?" Nodded, a soft smile brushing her lips. For the first time in a long while, she felt that life might not be as empty as she had feared. Despite the differences in their species, a bond formed between them. Sam had no wings, no shimmering skin, no ability to float between the platforms, and yet he moved with determination, courage, and a kindness that was stronger than anything had expected. He asked questions about her world, listened to her stories, and sometimes, without words, offered the comfort she so desperately needed. One afternoon, a group of young passed by, whispering and pointing at the human child. They were curious, some skeptical, others amused. "Why are you spending so much time with him?" one asked, hesitated. For the first time, she felt the need to explain herself. "Because he listens, because he cares, because sometimes the smallest hand can hold the heaviest heart." The children exchanged glances, unsure what to make of it, but did not care. She had found something that mattered more than their judgment. Sam, oblivious to the whispers, continued to work on the small garden he had started with near her platform. Together, they planted tiny luminous flowers that reflected the light of the twin suns. "They will bloom for you," Sam said, "and maybe for him too." Heart tightened. Blooming flowers, small gestures of life. They reminded her that even in loss, there was still hope. As the days turned into weeks, felt a strange transformation within herself. Grief was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She laughed quietly when Sam told silly human jokes, and she shared her favorite songs from which Sam tried to mimic with awkward but sincere attempts. Their bond grew beyond simple companionship. It became a partnership of hearts, one that crossed the boundaries of species, of size, and even of grief. One evening, as the twin suns dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in soft purples and golds, realized something she had not felt in a long time. She was no longer entirely alone. The warmth in her heart, fragile but real, reminded her that sometimes help comes in the smallest packages, from those we least expect. And in that moment, she knew that she and the human child had begun a journey neither of them would ever forget. Days passed peacefully in the floating city of, and's heart felt lighter with each visit from Sam. She began to smile more often, laugh quietly at his small jokes, and even hum the old songs she had loved. Yet the calm of the city could never last forever. One morning, a low hum vibrated through the crystal platforms. The wind, usually gentle, grew sharp and uneasy. Birds of light fluttered nervously, and the elders of the city gathered in urgent clusters, their wings flickering with concern. Felt a shiver run through her chest. Something was wrong. A loud, metallic voice echoed across the city. "Attention all residents of, a rare storm is approaching. Its winds are stronger than any seen in recent cycles. Secure your homes immediately." Fear tightened around's heart like a cold hand. Her platform was fragile, barely anchored to the edges of the city, and she had no one to help her. Her wings trembled at the thought of the storm tearing her home apart, scattering the memories of her lost mate across the skies. Sam, who had been sketching nearby, noticed the sudden tension. His small brow furrowed. "What's happening?" he asked, looking up at her with concern, shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "A storm, it's coming. It will destroy everything. My home, I don't know if it can survive." Sam's eyes grew serious. Though he was just a child, he radiated a courage far beyond his years. "Then we'll save it," he said simply, his small fists clenched. "We'll make it strong enough. Don't worry." Stared at him in disbelief. She wanted to protest. He was just a human child. How could he possibly help against a storm strong enough to tear the platforms from the sky? "You don't understand," she said, her voice quivering. "This is impossible. No one can." "Sometimes," Sam interrupted gently, "all it takes is someone willing to try." His words were small, but they carried weight. Felt her chest tighten. Could hope really come from a child? Could courage really arrive in the form of someone so small? The winds began to pick up, whistling through the gaps between platforms and rattling the delicate homes of the city. Glanced at her fragile tethers, her hands shaking. She wanted to run, to hide, to give up, but the thought of losing everything, of leaving her memories to be swept away by the storm, steeled her resolve. Sam jumped to his feet, ready to act. "Come on," he said, tugging at her wing. "We have to start now before it's too late." Hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Together they ran across the platforms, each step a careful balance on the narrow edges. Sam pointed out the stabilizing rods and tethers he had noticed during his explorations. He explained how to reinforce them, which knots to tie, and where the weakest points were. At first worked slowly, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. But Sam's voice, calm and steady, guided her. "Here, tie it, yes, like that, good." His praise gave her courage. With each knot she secured, each rod she reinforced, a small spark of hope grew inside her. The storm's first gusts began to hit, shaking the platforms violently. Its wings quivered, and she felt fear clawing at her chest, threatening to overwhelm her. But Sam stayed by her side, holding her hand, steadying her, reminding her that she was not alone. "We can do this," he said, his small frame bracing against the wind. "I won't leave you." As the dark clouds gathered above, and the sky turned an angry shade of purple, realized that the human child's courage was infectious. She felt herself standing taller, thinking clearer, working faster than she had in weeks. The storm may have been powerful, but together they had a chance. And in that moment, understood something profound. Bravery was not about size or strength or even experience. It was about heart. And this small human child had a heart larger than any she had ever known. The wind had grown fierce, howling across the platforms like wild beasts unleashed from the clouds. The twin suns were swallowed by dark, angry storm clouds, and lightning streaked across the sky in jagged flashes. Felt her heart pound in terror as she looked at her fragile home, the place that held the memory of her lost mate. Every tether and rod threatened to snap, every platform quivered under the storm's wrath. Sam grabbed her hand with surprising strength for his small frame. "We can do this," he said, shouting over the wind. His eyes were wide but resolute, shining with determination that no storm could dull. Shook her head, fear cutting through her courage. "You're just a child. This is impossible. You can't." "Sometimes," Sam interrupted, holding up a small rod he had carried from another platform. "All it takes is someone willing to try." His voice was calm, steady, unwavering. Swallowed hard, her fear clashing with a growing spark of trust. She looked at him, this small human child, so fragile yet so fearless, and realized that the impossible might just be within reach. Together they moved across the platform, securing tethers, reinforcing rods, and fastening loose planks. Sam's memory of the city, the patterns of construction he had observed, guided them. "Tie this here, make it tight. Yes, like that," he shouted, instructing as she worked with trembling wings. Each knot they tied felt like a small victory, each rod they secured a defiance against the storm. A gust of wind knocked a loose piece of crystal siding toward Sam, lunged instinctively, catching it just before it could strike him. Her heart hammered with fear, not for herself, but for the child whose courage had given her strength. "You can't leave me alone," she yelled, her voice raw. Sam only grinned, gripping the rod in his hand. "I never leave friends alone," he called back. Hours passed like minutes as the storm battered the floating city. Lightning struck dangerously close, illuminating the sheer drop below their platform, reminding them both of the stakes. His wings ached, her muscles screamed, but she did not stop. Sam's energy, small yet unwavering, pushed her forward. They worked side by side, two unlikely heroes facing a storm that seemed determined to tear the city apart. At one point, a massive gust tore a tether loose, screamed, fear choking her throat. She could see her home beginning to sway, threatening to collapse into the clouds below, but Sam didn't panic. He ran forward, placing himself against the trembling rod, bracing with all his strength. "Hold on, I've got it," he shouted. Joined him, using every ounce of her strength, and together they forced the tether back into place. The storm roared around them, relentless and unforgiving, but slowly, piece by piece, the home's structure held. Realized something astonishing. Fear had no power over them when courage worked hand in hand with hope. Sam, this tiny human child, was teaching her a lesson that no loss or grief ever had. That bravery is born in action, not in size or experience. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the wind began to subside, the lightning retreats, and the storm clouds started to part. The platform trembled beneath their feet, but it stood. Sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face, exhausted yet filled with awe. Sam, muddy and battered, grinned up at her. "We did it," he said simply. Looked at him, her heart swelling. You saved it. You saved my home. You saved me." Sam shrugged, as if it were nothing extraordinary, but knew better. He had risked everything in the face of the impossible. She realized then that hope, courage, and heart were more powerful than grief, fear, and loss combined. For the first time in months, smiled genuinely, a smile that came from the depths of her soul. The storm had tested her, and she had survived, not alone, but with a small human child who refused to give up. And in that moment she understood a truth she would carry forever. Even the smallest hands can change the course of destiny when guided by courage and love. When the storm finally passed, the floating city was quiet, almost eerily so. The twin suns peeked cautiously from behind the receding clouds, casting soft light over the trembling platforms. Broken tethers swayed gently, shards of crystal littered the edges, and small lights flickered where power lines had been shaken loose. The city bore the scars of the storm, but somehow, against all odds, home remained standing. She sank to her knees on the platform, her wings drooping from exhaustion. Every muscle in her body ached, her chest heaved, and tears streamed freely down her face. The memory of fear, the sheer terror of almost losing everything, clung to her, but beneath it a deep relief bloomed. She had survived. Her home had survived. And beside her, Sam was there, grinning as though nothing extraordinary had happened. You did it," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "I thought it was impossible. I thought." Her voice broke, swallowed by the memories of what could have been. Sam sat cross-legged, brushing dirt and debris from his small clothes. "We did it together," he said softly. "I just helped." Looked at him, the truth of his bravery shining brighter than any storm could ever dim. Slowly, other residents began to appear. Their wings flickered with surprise and awe as they took in the sight of the fragile human child and the widow who had faced the storm. Whispers ran through the platforms. "A human child! Did you see him? He stood against the storm." Some shook their heads, unable to comprehend such courage in someone so small and foreign. Neighbors approached cautiously, their voices trembling between awe and concern. "Are you both all right?" one elder asked, nodded, still holding Sam's small hand. "We are," she said. "Thanks to him, my home survived. Thanks to him, I survived." The words hung in the air, a declaration of the truth the villagers could not ignore. Bravery came in unexpected forms, and courage could arrive in the tiniest of packages. Sam, oblivious to the murmurs, began helping her secure the remaining tethers, moving with the same determination that had seen them through the storm. Watched him, her heart swelling with admiration. He had not only helped her physically, but had carried her spirit through the terror, showing her that even in the darkest moments, hope could shine through. That evening, as the city slowly recovered, sat beside Sam on the edge of her platform. The sky was painted with soft purples and golds, the clouds drifting peacefully where once they had raged. She gently touched the small human's shoulder. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "You saved my home, you saved my memories, you saved me." Sam smiled, tilting his head. "I didn't do it alone, you were brave too, we did it together." For the first time in months, felt a weight lift from her heart. The grief that had been her constant companion now seemed less suffocating, softened by the courage of a child who had reminded her of the strength still alive within herself. She realized that fear, while natural, could be faced and overcome when someone believed in you, no matter how small they seemed. Word of Sam's bravery spread through the floating city like wildfire. Neighbors who had once viewed humans with curiosity or mild suspicion now looked at him with respect and admiration. The elders discussed him in hushed tones, shaking their heads in disbelief. "A human child, standing against the storm, leading her through it," they murmured. Some said it was luck, but others understood the truth. Courage could not be measured by age or size. It came from the heart. As night fell over, returned inside her home, exhausted but filled with a sense of hope she had not known in months. Sam curled up nearby, still buzzing with energy despite the storm's chaos. She watched him sleep, thinking of the impossible task they had faced together. A small human had stepped into her life and reminded her that no darkness was too deep when one was willing to face it with courage and love. And somewhere in the quiet of the city, the wind whispered gently through the repaired tethers and the small glowing crystals, carrying a message. Even in the aftermath of disaster, life and hope could bloom anew. The morning after the storm, the floating city seemed almost magical in its calm. The twin suns reflected off the crystal platforms, glinting like scattered diamonds. Birds of light returned to the skies, and the gentle hum of the city's energy systems signaled that life was beginning again. Yet amidst this beauty, felt a quiet awe as she looked around her repaired home. She could not forget the terror of the previous day, nor the courage it had taken to survive it. Sam was already at her side, moving small shards of debris from the edges of the platform. His hands were scratched and smudged with dirt, but his smile remained bright and determined. "Morning," he called cheerfully. "Everything's safe now. See, we did it." Shook her head, tears of relief and gratitude forming in her eyes. "No, Sam, you did it. I would have lost everything without you." The child looked up at her, his face serious for a moment, and then smiled. "We both did it," he said softly. "You were brave too. You kept going even when it was scary. You're amazing." Felt warmth fill her chest. In that simple statement, she understood that courage was never about one person alone. It was shared, nurtured, and in moments of true challenge. As word of their survival spread, neighbors and elders came to visit. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, watched the small human child who had stood against the storm. Some bowed respectfully, others whispered quietly, unsure how to express the awe they felt. One elder stepped forward, wings trembling with emotion. "Child, you have done more than any of us imagined. You have shown us something precious, that courage can come from the most unexpected hearts." Stood beside Sam, holding his small hand. "It's true," she said. "He has reminded all of us that even in loss, even in fear, hope and bravery can shine brighter than the darkest storm." The elder nodded solemnly, and for the first time felt the approval of her community without shame or grief weighing her down. In the hours that followed, worked alongside Sam to repair the finer details of her home. They placed crystals back in their glowing positions, secured the delicate tethers, and swept away debris. The simple act of rebuilding became a symbol, not just of survival, but of resilience, courage, and the bond that had grown between the human and the alien. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, and Sam sat on the edge of her platform looking out at the city. "Do you see?" she asked softly. "Everything survived. Even the parts that seemed lost, even the things I feared I would never see again." Sam nodded, his small hand resting in hers. "Life always finds a way," he said, "and sometimes it takes two hearts working together to make sure it does." Smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known since the day had passed. The grief was still there, but it no longer ruled her. It had been tempered by courage, strengthened by companionship, and softened by the gentle determination of a small human child. She realized that even the deepest sadness could be healed by acts of bravery and kindness, and that life, though fragile, was stronger when shared. Word of Sam's actions spread further through, inspiring others. Villagers who had doubted humans now looked at them with respect. Children asked to learn from him, elders invited him to speak at gatherings, and stories of the small human who had faced the storm became part of the city's history. Watched it all, her heart full. She had not only survived the storm, but she had witnessed a change in the way her people saw the world and humans in a brighter, more hopeful light. Finally, as night fell and the stars sparkled above the floating city, held Sam's small hand close. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying all the weight of her gratitude. "You've changed my life, you've changed my heart." Sam smiled sleepily, leaning against her side. "I just did what friends do," he said quietly. Knew better. He had done more than that. He had reminded her that courage and hope could bloom anywhere, even in the heart of loss. And as the city of slept beneath the calm night sky, a new feeling settled in his heart. Gratitude, not just for survival, but for the human child who had taught her that even in the darkest storms, light could shine, and that courage, no matter the shape or size of its bearer, could change the world. Days turned into weeks, and the floating city of slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The storm had left marks, but it had also left lessons. Lessons of courage, hope, and unexpected friendship. His home stood firm, her tethers and rods repaired and strengthened. A testament not only to her own determination, but to the bravery of the small human child who had stood beside her. Sam had become a familiar sight in the city. Children followed him eagerly, wanting to learn about courage and problem-solving. Elders invited him to share his experiences, fascinated by the insights of a species so different yet so brave. But despite all the attention, Sam remained humble. To him, it was simply the right thing to do, help those who could not face danger alone. Watched him as he laughed with the children, guiding them gently and explaining carefully how to tie tethers or arrange the floating gardens. A small smile spread across her face. She had never imagined that someone so small, so human, could have such a profound impact, not just on her life, but on the lives of so many. He had changed her heart, and in turn, he had begun to change the hearts of the... One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and lavender, and Sam sat together on the edge of her platform. The wind was calm now, soft and warm, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers. took a deep breath and spoke quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "Sam, you've done more than I can ever explain. You've saved me, yes, but you've also reminded me of something I had almost forgotten, that life can still be beautiful." Sam looked up at her, his small hand brushing against hers. "You're not alone anymore," he said simply. "I'll always be here if you need me, and I think you've helped me too. You showed me that even when someone seems different, we can work together to make things better." Eyes glistened with tears. She realized then that their bond went far deeper than friendship. It was a connection forged through fear, hope, and courage, a connection that had saved both of them in different ways. The city around them hummed quietly. Platforms glowed softly, lights reflected on the crystal surfaces, and distant laughter carried across the edges. Thought of her lost mate, and for the first time she felt at peace. She knew that grief would always be a part of her, but it no longer held her captive. Through the courage of a human child, she had learned to face fear, to protect life, and to embrace hope once more. In the following weeks, began to open her home to others. She shared stories of lessons learned and the incredible bravery of Sam. The residents have listened, inspired by the tale of a tiny human child who had stood unafraid against a storm that could have destroyed them all. Sam, shy but proud, received their respect without seeking it, simply because he had acted with kindness and courage. Together, and Sam planted a small garden on the edge of her platform, a symbol of life, renewal, and friendship. The glowing flowers reflected the twin suns, and their petals swayed gently in the breeze, a constant reminder of hope. Smiled as she looked at the garden, thinking of the journey she had taken, from grief to despair, and finally to a place where joy could bloom once again. As night fell and stars appeared above the floating city, felt a quiet peace settle over her heart. She knew that life would continue to challenge her, that storms, both literal and emotional, would come again. But now she also knew that courage, hope, and the kindness of even the smallest heart could face any challenge. And in the heart of the floating city, one thing was certain. The human child had not only saved a widow from disaster, but he had also reminded an entire world of the power of bravery, love, and friendship. And as she held Sam's hand, feeling its warmth and strength, realized something profound. The future was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace, with courage, hope, and a human child by her side. In that moment, the city felt alive in a new way. It was no longer just a place of floating platforms and shimmering wings. It was a home, a community, a world where the smallest hearts could make the biggest difference. And knew, without a shadow of doubt, that she would never face the future alone again.